Perfect. Looks like we have a lot of people on the phone too. So welcome everybody. This is Workgroup 5, Maximizing Participation in Child Nutrition Programs. It's been a couple of months, so I hope everyone has had a good summer, and I'm glad everyone's here in person and on the phone. We have a packed meeting today that I think will be really productive. So just to get started, I thought we could do introductions since we also have some new faces in the room. So if we can all go around, starting in the room, and introduce yourself, the organization you're with, and then I thought in spirit of back to school, since I know everyone's very busy right now, and especially this week, what your favorite nostalgic back to school memory is. So I can start. I'm Carrie Thielen. I'm the Workgroup Chair, and I also work for CDE School Nutrition Unit, and my favorite back-to-school memory is I used to love getting a new trapper keeper every year. Definitely a kid of the 80s, so, yeah.
And I'm happy to go next since I knew what the icebreaker was going to be. I had time to reflect. I am Naomi Stenson from the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And one of my favorite memories, and I don't think kids do this anymore, but remember using the paper grocery bags to wrap your textbook and then decorate it? I miss that.
Hi, I'm Kathy with Food Bank of the Rockies, and my favorite back-to-school memory probably was clothes shopping with my mom. She always made sure we had new and nice clothes to go back to school.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Fabraro, and I work at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Today I'm here strictly as a facilitator to help support all of you in planning. So I'm taking off my CDPHE hat and just putting on my facilitator hat today. So thank you for having me. And I have to second the paper bag covers. I forgot about that. Super fun.
My name is Rainey Wickstrom, and I'm with the Colorado League of Charter Schools. And I think probably getting all my little supplies in order was the most fun.
Hi, I'm Megan Squires with USDA Food and Nutrition Service, and I work on the school meals programs there. And I would say similar to whoever, I think you said clothes, but mine was specifically the sneakers, getting a new pair of sneakers and then getting to wear them to school.
Good morning. My name is Gabby. I'm at CDE, and my favorite summer memory is probably crying on my way to go to sleepover camp and then crying because I didn't want to leave after.
I'm Sam. I'm a dietetic intern at CDE. I just started this week. And for me, back to school meant also starting cross-country running, which was my favorite sport of the year, so I was happy about that.
Hey everybody, Stephanie Bettiscapio. I work at the Colorado Children's Campaign, and I really enjoy just buying new pens and pencils. Like, I don't know, just, yeah, the Target section was hard to go past this last week.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm Director in Nutrition Services in Greeley Evans. I'm really hoping that somebody, before we get to the end, says their favorite part was getting back to lunch, but it wasn't mine. I gotta go with Steph on this. In the fall, when we go back to school, my mom would let me go to Gyrie's, and if you're from Denver, you know what that is.
Yeah.
I love pens. Still to this day, I back to school shop at Gyrie's in the pen section.
I'm Jen Piper with Douglas County School District Nutrition Services. My favorite memory was I got to pick out one Lisa Frank notebook each year, and the rest had to be the cheap 10-cent ones, but I got one really cool one each year.
Hi, my name is Leticia, and I'm working with a Blueprint with Erin. One of the biggest memories I have is just going into the classroom and figuring out who also spoke Spanish, because that was going to be my best friend that year.
Hey, I'm Kevin Warner, also with the Blueprint. More so like getting into high school and college was just looking through the course catalog and choosing the different courses that I could take that semester, so.
Hi, my name is Andrew Stricker, and I'm going to cheat on this one because I just had a new nostalgic memory, walking my son to preschool for the first time last week.
Hi, my name is Jackie Pines. I'm with the Family Resource Center Association, and I think my favorite memory, I lived on a cul-de-sac, and so we had our bus stop crew, so all the kids from all the grades, we'd hang out together at the bus stop before it came, and that was always much better and more fun than the actual school.
Kyle Sargent with the Colorado Health Foundation. My most favorite memory was last Wednesday when all 4 of my kids went back to work, or school. So 3 of whom are teenagers, so that's, whatever year it is, that's probably my favorite. But the other piece I remember, it's not necessarily the 80s, might be a little bit older than that, but is the Peaches. So if you remember the folders that we put in our Trapper Keepers.
I'm Taylor with Hunger Free Colorado. I think I was 6 when my parents decided I was old enough to get myself ready in the morning for school, but on the first day of school, both my parents would wake up early and they'd make us a nice breakfast. We'd have like pancakes and bacon and eggs and stuff, so I always looked forward to that.
All right, hi, my name is Paola Bad, and I'm the new Community Engagement and Child Nutrition Manager at Hunger Free Colorado. And thinking back to it, at the moment, it wasn't my favorite, but now I appreciate it. My dad used to get me ready for school, so he would do my hair every morning when I was in elementary, and I remember just putting a whole bunch of clips because he would do it all bumpy. And looking back to that, I like really appreciate that and miss that.
Mark with Hunger Free Colorado, and I was one of those weird children who I loved to get the reading list because then I was so excited about the books that I would get to read that school year. So.
I'm Erica Edwards, and I'm with Jeffco Nutrition Services. I think everybody, a lot of talk about supplies, but I remember my favorite was getting those pens, like the 4-color pens, where you pressed one down, it would be blue, and the next one would be red, and I lost it very quickly every year, but I got a new one at the beginning of the year.
I'm Deborah Cameron with Colorado Department of Human Services Food Distribution. And I think my favorite one, except for the Peaches, because you got the brand new Peaches, you get straw all over them, is the pencil boxes, because it was brand new, and at the time it was cardboard, so they fell apart during the year, but you got a brand new one at the beginning.
Hello, my name is Kasha Larson. I am the Director of Nutrition over at Adams 14, and I'm going to kind of follow along Deb, but I remember getting a new LaSac for my pencils.
Good morning, I'm Erin Ulrich. I'm the Implementation Director for the Blueprint. So my mom was a seamstress when I was in elementary school, so she would make me an outfit that I would get to puffy paint. I thought that was amazing until I got to be in like 4th or 5th grade, and then people started making fun of me.
Hello, I'm Abby Lave. I'm also with the Department of Public Health, an evaluator there that helps with the needs assessment. My favorite back-to-school memory, kind of with the supplies, we'd always go school shopping, my brother and I and my mom, and to go get clothes, and then we'd go get supplies, and similar, where, you had to get all the cheap folders and notebooks, but you got, like, one special one, so.
Great, and then we'll just go to everybody on the phone, and I'll just start at the top with Derek.
Hi, this is Derek Lambert. I'm with the No Kid Hungry Center for Best Practices. I'm sitting in for my colleague Carolyn Waite, who normally joins these calls. I believe she's out on leave for a couple of weeks. And my favorite back-to-school memory is, for a while when I was a kid, the light-up shoes, the LA Gear light-up shoes were really big. And so if I could get a pair of those to start the school year, that was always awesome. The lights never lasted very long, but I really liked those.
So whoever is on number 303-322-3515?
That actually might be us. I think sorry, the video got kind of messed up, but I think the next one would be, is it Heidi Hanbach?
It's Brenda Heimbach, and I'm with El Paso County Public Health.
No problem. And my favorite memory is about a month before school started, we would buy some school clothes, but then my mom and sisters and I would also get fabric and make school clothes, and that was fun to do together.
I think Lauren? Are you there, Lauren? We can skip down to Liz.
Hello, this is Liz Gangware. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. And I am with Jovial Concepts. And my most nostalgic memory is not being able to sleep the night before school because I was so excited to see like who was going to be in my class and what new friends I was going to make. And I could never sleep the day before school. So.
Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan George Nichols. I work at the Department of Public Health and Environment with the Child and Adult Care Food Program. I actually was a very anxious, nervous person on the first day of school, and that fed all the way through college. So that was my memory. It's not really good, but I'll jump to the kid one that my son started kindergarten, and he was so excited. So I was just so thrilled that he didn't follow in my footsteps.
Rachel?
Good morning. Rachel Phillips with Aurora Public Schools as a wellness coordinator. Probably the fact that I didn't have to do chores every day. I finally got a reprieve from that.
I think we'll go back to Lauren. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Lauren Rose. I'm with the Food Bank for Larimer County. And I feel like this is going to show my real nerd side, but I was always excited to get new textbooks. So,
and I am Natalie Kyriakis. I am Lauren's dietetic intern, and I am also going to be a nerd and say going back to marching band.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's it, right? Yeah, perfect. Well, it sounds like we'll probably be going to Target this weekend.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And we're just going to jump into the agenda and start some of these presentations for the first half of the meeting. We're going to start with really setting the stage and providing some updates on current participation in child nutrition programs in Colorado. I know we've talked a bit about this over the last 7-8 months, but we thought it would be good just to revisit where we're at, and so we can go into the second half of the meeting and where we're going and really figure out what this work group is going to do to prioritize and determine what types of projects we will work on as a group. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Naomi to start off with giving an overview of the child nutrition programs that are listed in the blueprint under Goal 5.
Is it this presentation?
Okay, thank you, Carrie, for kicking it off. As you are aware, or most of you might be aware, CDCG and CDE administer federal child nutrition programs for the state of Colorado, and together we work hard to meet the nutritional needs of Colorado youth, both in school and out of school. While there are many programs and initiatives that fall under the child nutrition program, this table is the areas that we're focusing for work group number 5. And they include the age range of the programs that we serve, and then the state agency that administers the after-school program. We're going to go through each program and give you a high-level snapshot of the state of program participation in Colorado before diving into the findings of the needs assessment. You've probably heard me talk over the last several months about the CECFP. It's a federal program that reimburses centers and daycare home providers for serving healthy meals and snacks. Our program is an opportunity to introduce healthy options and encourage healthy behaviors at a young age before they even enter into their K-12 education. And the other thing I want to know is that if a provider or a daycare home center is already offering food, meals, or snacks to their kids, our program is an opportunity to supplement the cost, and they can use that extra money somewhere else, whether it's staff or non-food expenses. Typically, our program is offered in a child care center, daycare home, and Head Start, and then it's also offered outside of school hours. And what I want to highlight about the CECFP that I think is unique is that we can offer our program on holidays, weekends, and during vacation breaks, such as winter break. And then this next slide just shares some data about participation in the CECFP, and I'll let you process and read that, but I thought it was important to share with you that our last fiscal year, I think it was fiscal year 18, CECFP paid out around $25 million in food reimbursement. I think that's pretty amazing.
I'll talk a little bit about the school nutrition programs. First, just a really high-level overview of the National School Lunch Program. In Colorado, we have 207 school food authorities, and when we say, you'll hear us say school food authorities, SFAs a lot, and that is the entity that administers the National School Lunch Program. We don't say school district because it also includes charter schools, private schools, facility schools, and other school types outside of just the school district. We have all school districts participating in the National School Lunch Program except for two, and that's Aspen and Hinsdale. Hinsdale, we're still working with, has come off the program, but so we have pretty good coverage with the National School Lunch Program. Something worth noting, and we've talked a lot about in this group, is that something unique to Colorado is that over half of our districts operate on a 4-day school week. So that really speaks to a unique need of filling the meal gap on the 5th day. Just to understand a little bit of the makeup of the state, we have 41% of our student population is eligible for free and reduced price meals. And then on average, 78% of students who receive a free and reduced price meal are participating in the school breakfast program. So we have good coverage, but you can see there's still room to improve by adding more school breakfast programs and also by increasing student participation in the breakfast program, which we'll get to a little bit later in the needs assessment. It's also worth noting that Colorado has some significant legislation that's really helped with increasing participation in our state. The Lunch Protection Act and the Start Smart Act, which Danielle and Stephanie might touch on briefly in just a bit. But what that has done is has removed the reduced price meal copay for students and families who are eating lunch and breakfast. So all students who are eligible for a free or reduced price meal receive a free meal. We also had breakfast after the bell passed in 2013, and this program requires public schools with 70% or more students who are eligible for free and reduced price meals to offer students a breakfast at no cost. So I briefly wanted to talk about CEP, the community eligibility provision. It is a strategy of the blueprint, but we haven't focused too much as a group on this. So I just wanted to give a high-level overview because it's really easy to go into the weeds with this program, as many of you might know. But so the community eligibility provision provides free meals to all students in eligible high-poverty districts. And with CEP, the eligibility requirements and the reimbursement is connected to direct certification. And so what that means is students who are automatically certified for a free meal through SNAP participation. So the eligibility and reimbursement that schools receive is really is connected to SNAP participation. And so we no longer use the free and reduced price meal application to certified students. And so what that presents a unique barrier in Colorado is that, as you might know with just the blueprint as a whole, SNAP participation in Colorado is in the bottom 10, I believe. I think we're the 45th. And so that presents a barrier of entry into the program. So what happens is, because of the low SNAP participation, schools that are eligible might not receive appropriate funding, enough funding to support the program, and they might not even be eligible when really we do know there's a need, but they are not even eligible because the SNAP participation in that area is low. So we have 28% of eligible schools are participating in CEP. And so I think there are a lot of other factors I won't go into, but a lot of it is really connected to finances. And so I just wanted to, we will get into that a little bit later because that is one of the strategies, but CDE works really closely with school districts that are eligible to really run a financial analysis on this. And so because of the SNAP participation, that really has created a barrier in Colorado for this program.
So in front of you, you should have a handout that looks like this. Is blue at the top. And it's a great handout that provides detail of what programs are available when school is out. And it even breaks it down by eligibility and what each program is allowed to serve and claim for reimbursement. So I encourage you to take a look at this and feel free to share it with partners or others within your community. We would appreciate that. But what I wanted to review, sorry, I got to remember the microphone. Are you okay if I go over NSLP or? So I just want to kind of give high level of what NSLP after school looks like, and then CACFP. Again, this is very high level. We could go into the weeds, but we might be here all day, so I'd like to avoid that. But NSLP allows the SFA to claim one snack per day, and typically that is reimbursed at a free rate for sites that are 50% or greater free and reduced eligibility. And then CACFP, school day sites, they can claim up to one after-school supper and snack per child. And then on non-school days, they can claim one meal and one snack per child.
I'm going to add something about this chart. So this is a brand new resource, and I just wanted to note, you might have seen something like this. Oh, sorry.
You might have seen something like this previously, but what you'll notice is that summer food service program was added, and so the title was changed to When School's Out, Child Nutrition Options for Kids. So it's any time that a child is out of the normal, school schedule. And it's been updated hot off the press, and hopefully this is helpful in all of your respective work areas.
Thank you. So that leads us to the last program about that's offered when school is out. It's the Summer Food Service Program. this group has focused on this for the last 4 or 5 months. So I think we're all well acquainted with where we're at. There's a lot of opportunity to improve participation in summer in Colorado. We rank 40th nationally in the number of youth that participate in summer versus the National School Lunch Program. So our current participation this year did increase, so we increased our sponsors 3.5%. So we have 88 summer sponsors in the state, and then we decreased slightly in the site. I did want to provide just a preliminary update around some of the work that we did over the last few months. I just checked, thanks to Share Our Strength and your great data dashboard, that I saw that we already have a 110% increase in the summer text line this year compared to last year, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to all of the outreach and work that this group and the Blueprint as a whole did. So it's pretty amazing, so I think we should celebrate that success, and then I'll continue to get the data over the next couple months to see where we're at. Summer sponsors have 60 days to claim, and so we probably won't know if participation increased until about October or so. But really, it's been a really amazing opportunity to work with the Blueprint and the coordinated effort that we were able to pull together in a short amount of time, and I think we're already planning for next year and would love to just build on that momentum and a lot of the ideas that were generated out of this group and just keep that going. So, so thank you for all that you did with that.
Okay, so this slide talks a little bit about how CDPHE and CDE has been collaborating and working together to maximize child nutrition programs. The first item on that list is something I believe it's been a while. We've shared with you all in the past is about the joint technology project between CDE and CDPHE. Both agencies released an RFP back in December of 2018, and since then have procured, and we're almost finalizing our contracts. We've procured a technology vendor. And what that means for those who are new to the team and maybe haven't heard about it, currently shared customers that participate with CDE and CACFP, each agency has the same technology vendor, and the shared customer has to log into each agency's application and update program information, file their claims, etc. This new project that's kicking off this fall includes purchasing one technology vendor, so the shared customer would just log into one system and then pick the program that they want to work with. But what's going to be great about it is entering details about SFA or the superintendent or the district. It'll all populate, and the shared customer would only have to add it into the computer one time versus multiple times. So the other thing that each agency did was apply for USDA grant funds to pay for this project. And we were awarded the money to fund the project. So CDE and CCFP will kick this off October 1st. So hopefully by next August, September 2020, we'll be able to implement this new system for the state of Colorado. Some other things I'll highlight. We continue to work together to streamline our application process. Obviously, we want to make it as easy as possible for our customers. Most recently, actually a couple days ago, our team, CDE and CDPHE, got together and shared program information. You know, even though we're both child nutrition programs, and I can speak to this because I used to be a school food authority, CACFP and NSLP has some differences. And what we did on Tuesday is shared program information and provided a platform where nutrition consultants could ask questions about one another's program and have a better understanding, so that when they are out conducting reviews or interacting with customers, if they identify an opportunity while they're visiting that customer, they could share a little bit of information and refer them to one another's program. So while my consultant would be a CACFP expert, they have enough knowledge to know that NSLP might help fill the gap somewhere, and they can refer that customer to CDE. And then we're working together, just to identify opportunities where we can offer CACFP in a 4-day school week district. And those opportunities continue to be discussed. And I think we're going to talk about that here in a little bit with the data. Oh, am I still going? Yeah. Okay, CACFP highlights. We have lots going on, amazing things going on. Most recently, and this is not the first time, we participated with the Colorado School Nutrition Conference, the annual conference, and we continue to share information about CACFP. And I think we spoke about the challenges that a SFA might have participating on both programs, whether it's resources or maybe limited after-school programming. But what we recognize in CACFP is that our SFAs are an avenue to share information with others in their community. So maybe the district can't take on our program, but they know somebody else. And so we want to equip them with enough information to be able to say, hey, you might benefit from CACFP. Other highlights, we've improved the application process. We have remote nutrition consultants, one in the southern region and western region. And what's important about their role is they live in the region, they understand the communities, and they provide outreach to help increase participation. CACFP will be releasing 4 new online training modules. They're updated to current regulation and requirement, but what's nice about this, if somebody's located in a remote area, rather than maybe drive into Denver or Pueblo or wherever the training might be, these are available to them. We continue to work with our partners, including CDE, CDHS, Hunger Free, our school districts, etc. And then most recently, which will be placed on our website in the very near future, CACFP created a cost-benefit tool that non-participating CACFP sites could use to evaluate if they would benefit participating on our program, and we're very excited to share that. So as soon as I get it on the website, I'll email it out to Kevin to share with all of you.
So a few things that CDE has been doing around participation and access. Really, the blueprint has been huge in moving our office and our work and our focus from more of a compliance focus to really evolving at a systems level to address participation access. So it's very exciting, and we're really taking this opportunity to integrate this and throughout our work. So a few highlights that I wanted to share today is we're really looking at expanding our ability and capacity to look for other sources of funding for more innovative projects. We just completed a needs assessment, which I know everyone's aware of, that we received the Colorado Health Foundation Planning Grant over the last year. And so that's really going to drive our work going forward, and we've created an implementation plan in which we're seeking funding for as well, which I'll talk about after the needs assessment update, to really support moving this work forward and moving the goals of the blueprint forward. We have developed a unit strategic plan this year, and this is another example of where we're really focused on compliance historically, but we've now added participation, access, and process improvement into the work we're doing. So while we have some specific staff at the state level working on the blueprint, we're really making sure it's integrated across our office and into all of our work. And then a very exciting, some exciting news that I'm sure everyone is very thrilled to hear about is that the USDA has awarded us a 5-year review cycle waiver. So what that means is school food authorities now will be audited every 5 years as opposed to every 3 years. So, the compliance with these programs is a big part of operations, and so this will allow CDE and SFAs to spend some more time on training and program improvements and focusing on participation and access. So that's a really exciting thing that we're starting this year. So that is just the landscape of child nutrition in Colorado right now, and I invited Danielle and Stephanie to provide an update on the policy landscape, which will help inform our discussion later on, but just to give an overview of some updates and some opportunities.
Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Danielle. So in addition to the Director of Nutrition for Greeley, I also sit in the chair seat for Public Policy and Legislation for the Colorado School Nutrition Association. And last year, with the help of many partners and advocates, we were able to pass through the Colorado legislature the final step in the expansion of Lunch Protection Act. For those of you who do not know, a reduced eligible student would be required to pay a 40-cent copay for lunch nationally. That's the way that the reimbursement works. The state of Colorado spent about 10 years chipping away at that copay by grade. We started K through 2 back in 2009, and last year we were able to complete that. So we are now PK through 12. The state of Colorado will reimburse the school food authority for that 40 cents. So for a family, a child, or even a lunch cafeteria staff member, there is no difference between a free eligible student and a reduced eligible student. I want to say a little bit about how we got to that place. Really, really fortunate to have partners like Steph sitting next to me, because we got together with legislators who were concerned about how students are managed in the lunchroom, and this really stemmed out of a conversation about ending the practice of lunch shaming in the state of Colorado. I hope most of us in this room understand and realize that lunch shaming isn't an actual practice in Colorado. It's a very, very unfortunate act of usually one rogue individual in a cafeteria somewhere. And so it was through those conversations with our legislators and our partners that we were able to help inform that the very best way to stop any type of shaming is to not ask a 8th grader for 40 cents in the line. So that's a huge success. I have high hopes that we've started to create really good relationships with our state legislator to continue to fund child nutrition programs as the best way to prevent lunch shaming. Okay, I'm going to let Steph talk about our CNR subcommittee.
Thank you. Hey all, Stephanie Perez-Carrillo with the Colorado Children's Campaign. I don't think I really shared my background or what I work on for the Children's Campaign, but I mostly focus on K through 12 issues, and then to the extent that I'm brought into the healthy eating, active living, I'll defer to other partners in the room as well who are also in this space, so I'm not the end-all be-all of the knowledge here. So specifically around the child nutrition reauthorization, I think there are a couple of folks in this room that have been part of that subcommittee work group. I think we've met bi-weekly, it feels like, or at least once a month. And for those who don't know what child nutrition reauthorization is, for when we passed the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, in 2010, it kind of instituted a wave of how we carried out some of these systems, specifically the systems that feed kids. So when you think just beyond the National School Lunch Program and some others, we think about WIC, all the programs that touch kids are part of the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Program, or legislation rather, and this is the federal level. And so in 2015, there were efforts to reauthorize the Child Nutrition Act, and nothing really happened. So the conversations have come again at the federal level, and so as we're thinking about programs that we want to prioritize that align with what we're already working on in our work groups, we've done that. So I think we landed on two big things, and Erin, if you want to add anything here, anybody else that's part of that group, I'm going to refer to my beautiful one-pager that I've already started sharing with people.
I hope you have the new edition. I hope you have the new edition.
Give me your edits after this meeting.
If I don't have the new edition, there's a lot of grace in this room. So first is largely around supporting improvements in quality of food provided through child nutrition programs. And then secondly, expanding the reach of WIC, which this group doesn't specifically focus on. But I know that there have been other partners in the room that contributed comments and ultimately created this template that we will be using to build out template comments. Did I miss anything in child nutrition reauthorization, folks in the room?
I don't think you missed anything, but I do want to add to this. The conversation with the Blueprint Subcommittee and in Colorado has not touched at all on the idea of stop the block, but I want to put it out there because you're going to hear it. So as we get closer and closer to reauthorizing the Child Nutrition Act, there are federal legislators that believe that a state block grant program would be best for a child nutrition program. I think it goes without saying in this room, I hope that we have universal support to stop the block. That's the phrase that has been adopted. Block grant funding for child nutrition programs would be absolutely disastrous in a high-growth area like Colorado. Simply put, it freezes our funding for the current population and does not allow for that population to change. As we well know, the Front Range of Colorado has an ever-growing population. So as this continues to come up, if you hear in the media anything about block grant funding, I wanted you to be aware of what that means.
Yeah, just for the sake of context, like this came up in 2015 and nothing happened. It wasn't necessarily reauthorized, and that doesn't mean that the program stopped or the funding stops. It just means the opportunity to revise or to make any changes, specifically based on research or what we know works well for our communities and specifically in the Colorado context. So I think we'll be continuing to meet, and it could be as early as September, it could be as early as never. So depending on how things go with at the federal level are really largely out of our control. So I commend the folks that have been part of that subcommittee who've been really patient in developing what it is that we're prioritizing. The third point up there, the time to issue brief, I think there are a few partners around the room that are also part of the Lunch Cabinet Coalition, which for the past few years was working on expanding the Lunch Protection Act. And one of the things that we heard from providers, or specifically kiddos in schools, as we incorporated them in the process and asked for their feedback, was that not only was like access to food a problem, but the amount of time they had to eat. And I worked with Rainey on this. She and I met maybe last year. It feels like time has passed really quickly. But thinking about highlighting what schools are doing to optimize the time to eat from the moment that students get their trays to the time that they sit down, and thinking about how that can reduce food waste and plate waste. So the Children's Campaign received a very small grant that doesn't really do much in terms of it doesn't provide a lot, actually, but we want to prioritize time to eat in the larger context of Smart Source. So one of the things that the Children's Campaign advocates for is access to data about how kids are doing in schools, specifically around other elements of their health, access to mental health, access to school nurses. And so one of the pieces that we receive information on from the state through Smart Source, which is a state-administered survey, is how much time kids have to eat. And so as we see some of the trends there, we just want to make sure that we're highlighting some schools that are implementing best practices and ways that we can encourage other schools to do that. Another part of I alluded to Smart Source, mostly because that's going to be an effort, I think, in the 2020 session. So as we look to changes that might happen at the legislature, every year it feels like they want to strip funding for Healthy Kids Colorado survey, and this year Smart Source will be housed under the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And so the two will be a line item as the Joint Budget Committee is considering what to prioritize with the budget. So there might be some opportunities for advocacy there for folks that are interested in those sources of information. Anything to eat on Time to Eat or questions?
Yeah, I want to throw out there, when this advocacy time rolls around for my other school food professionals in the room, and for any parent with teenagers, I'm looking at you, Kyle. We're in day 4 of school today in Greeley-Evans, and my largest high school, 1,700 students enrolled, officially rolled down their lunch period to 28 minutes this year. 28 minutes to serve 1,700 students, one 28-minute period. That's my shortest. My longest period at another high school with 1,200 enrolled is 31 minutes. So I have between 28 and 31 minutes to serve upwards of 2,000 students. And this is a trend that we're seeing across the state of Colorado because of the pressure that we are putting on our educators to perform the way that standards are tied to evaluations for teachers. So I welcome all of you, parents, school food professionals, everyone, to get involved in this, because when Steph is able to bring this forward in the legislature, we're all going to need to cram pack those committee hearing rooms and talk about the devastating impacts that this has, not just on plate waste and overall cafeteria environment, but my God, on their ability to learn because they don't have time to cram food into their faces. So I think this is going to be our most important issue in Colorado in the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, and I'm thankful to Rainey, who kind of pointed this out as one of we had proposed another grant program. You know, there's so many grant programs, it feels like, but we didn't move forward with that this past legislative session because we wanted to learn some more. And unfortunately, we didn't have as much access to the data around Time to Eat. The way that SmartSource currently collects the data is by region. And so what we saw was that the kids that have the smallest amount of time to eat are actually the smallest kids who we know need nutrients to grow and to learn, and all those pieces. So we're creating kind of a small work group around the research itself, and we'll be meeting in the next month. I think right now CSNA, Children's, I know Rainey's part of the group, I think the American Diabetes Association, and some others. So if you're interested in joining that small work group, we'll specifically be looking at the research and the research base, and then putting forth some recommendations, maybe not for the 2020 legislative session, or maybe not even something that needs to go to the legislature, or that is a statutory change, but rather maybe a regulatory change, or even just putting out some recommendations or guidelines for school districts that are trying to grapple with a lot of the demands that they have within the school day.
Is the issue brief on Is the issue brief on Children's Campaign's website, or will you send it out, or how do you?
It has not been developed yet. We have a lot of the research, so folks that were part of the Lunch Cabinet Coalition, we had this kind of insane spreadsheet that had all the research about all the things. And so we have the research base for it, but there's not an issue brief out yet, so that's what this grant is for. The grant is to put out the issue brief, and so it'll likely live on the Children's Campaign website, but I don't think we've gotten that far. We're literally meeting for the project plan next month, so. Other questions? Yeah, Rena.
I just would like to dramatize this point a little bit further. When Tri-County had a big grant, some years ago, Kyle was involved with that. There were 14 school districts doing the work on that grant, and I did an informal kind of study as to how much time kids were getting to eat in those 14 districts. And at that time, I was able to get confirmation that by the time kids sat down, they had 7-minute reservation in their cafeteria. And so that plays a big role in hunger. And I also think it plays kind of an unwitting denigration of the food itself. If we don't give them time to eat, we're not really valuing the food or them. And so just the role that time to eat or lack of really plays in this whole hunger issue and the food value issue, I think is really important. Thank you.
Anybody else? Other questions, comments? All right, I'll move on to the next bullet point, and I think this was just in an effort to be really transparent about where we're all at in terms of the anti-hunger organization's work. The Children's Campaign isn't necessarily an anti-hunger organization, but as we think about the health and well-being of Colorado kids, hunger is kind of fundamental there. And so we'll be meeting with a couple of anti-hunger organizations in September, just talking about the landscape for 2020 legislative session and probably some other regulatory items. I haven't seen that agenda yet, but just in transparency that meeting's happening. This next piece, I don't know how many of you know about the public charge. Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, maybe I'm off. Mark, could you provide us a couple of comments maybe on the Anti-Hunger Organization September meeting?
Yeah, so we're helping pull that together with the goal of getting those organizations that are going to be leading or pursuing state legislative items to combat hunger in this upcoming session together to share what we're doing and figure out how we can support each other and be stronger by working together. So if you did not receive an invite and you're pushing for an anti-hunger legislative strategy, it's just my oversight of not knowing that you are in that space, so let me know and you'll be added to the invite. It's September 4th in the afternoon, I believe, so let me know.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. I think as I look at this slide, I realize that there was a better way to present it, but it's fine, it is what it is. The last point, the public charge, I'm not sure how many of you have read about this public charge rule, have been educated or have been educating your communities. But the rule was proposed last summer, and basically what this means is that if you're a person, you're an immigrant with documentation, you have like legal permanent status, and you're wanting to obtain a green card, as you're thinking about applying for that green card or even going through the process, the federal government can now consider things like SNAP, Medicaid, and some other food assistance programs as a reason to deny your application. So before this rule was kind of proposed, there were a lot of other measures that were when this rule was first proposed last summer, there were a lot of other things incorporated in this or that would have been included in this calculation. And I think the biggest distinction to name is that this test has always been around, but it has been for people that have lived outside of the U.S. So let's say you were a person coming to the U.S. trying to receive your green card or trying to obtain some type of temporary status, this public charge test would be used to either deny you entry or to say, all right, you're welcome into this country. And I think it's a really explicit or maybe not explicit way of differentiating who contributes to our country, if you want to buy into that type of narrative. But so in spite of the number of comments that the federal government received in opposition, 260,000 comments in opposition to this public charge test, the rule will be going into effect on October 1st. And so what that means is we're going to see a dramatic decline we've already seen dramatic declines in SNAP, in Medicaid, and I think beyond that, we were talking about community eligibility provision, and even I'll get into the SNAP BBCE piece, but what this means is that we'll even have more implications for kiddos that are directly certified for lunch programs, specifically through SNAP, because what happens is a lot of these children are citizen-born, and they're eligible for these programs, but because the parents don't want to put their families at risk, they'll forego the services for which they are eligible. So I have fact sheets here, and there are other organizations that are working to mobilize around the state to educate members or to educate the community as to what this means. And I think when you think about things like access to health and healthcare, we've already seen declines in immigrant populations of them not attending appointments or missing appointments, wellness visits. So when you think about the larger context of what this means for public health, it's really problematic, and even for our service providers in the healthcare industry and other industries as well.
get into prioritizing and we talk to policy. But since we have an hour left, we want to make sure that we have enough time to do a facilitated discussion with Gina. I'm just going to pass it over to Abby, Abby Lave, our contract evaluator, CDPHE, who works on the needs assessment with CDE over the last year. We already shared the report. Hopefully everyone got it in the email that we sent out, and we also sent it through the Blueprint newsletter. And we also talked about the preliminary results back in April, so I know a lot of you are already familiar with some of the findings. So we probably will breeze through this pretty quickly, and if you have any questions, feel free to come to Abby or myself or Gabby and reference the report, but we want to make sure we have enough time for the second half of the meeting.
Hi, everybody. Okay. So yeah, I am going to breeze through this. Hopefully you did see the report, or at least it's a long report. There's a lot of data. So hopefully you at least got to kind of look at the executive summary. That sums it up real nicely. So we did the needs assessment. We did a mixed method. We conducted 2 surveys, one with our SFAs and one with summer sponsors, so that we could kind of really help round out all the information. We also conducted some key informant interviews to help get a little bit more context and a little bit more details around kind of those opportunities and challenges that the SFAs and summer sponsors experience. We had a great response rate. We had 88% response rate from the SFAs and 67% from summer sponsors who wanted to respond and kind of really inform the work that CDE could do to help support their work going forward and increasing participation and access to these programs. We also reviewed a lot of the CDE programmatic data around youth, participation rates, things like that, looking at the FRL. And we're going to continue working with CDE to kind of think through different methods to help target or kind of focus their technical assistance and training with the different SFAs and summer sponsors. So I won't go a lot into that, but more things happening. So this is organized by program. So overall for lunch program, these are the best practices and challenges. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. You will see some themes across the different programs around what kind of those best practices and challenges are. Right off the bat, kind of that improved meal quality is something that across all programs, SFAs and summer sponsors are working on. And they're doing that through a variety of different things and involving students with menu development, doing taste testing, kind of trying to help minimize some of those different challenges that they experience. I will say for lunch program, the biggest opportunity that SFAs saw to increase participation was at the high school level. And there's different challenges around that with open campus, with different pieces. So kind of trying to figure out how to probably address these challenges could help kind of with that opportunity piece. Breakfast, you'll see very similar best practices and challenges. I think there's some unique challenges that we saw with the breakfast program, just with the timing and getting kids at school, those kinds of pieces. But again, one of the biggest opportunities that the SFA saw around this was at the high school level. So figuring out some of those alternative options to make sure that those kids are getting some breakfast as they get into the school doors. We asked about, and I'm going to actually kind of breeze through this as well, because this is really, again, we kind of saw that the expanding programs to new sites. So at the breakfast side of it, not all sites are providing breakfast, so there was some opportunity here. Schools or SFAs do seem to be kind of at different points here, so some have no interest in expanding to new sites, but it's a small few. And then but we kind of talked with CDE about really trying to focus on those that are at least contemplating opening to new sites and kind of really thinking through what their challenges are to help support them with this work moving forward.
Do you have any information on the other category? I know you were going through quickly, but
yeah,
that's so large.
So the lunch program, most SFAs already provide the lunch program, so there really isn't a ton to really add new sites. I know Carrie had mentioned that there are a few districts that don't offer lunch, and so there's probably some different things, but I think those tactics will end up looking different to expand lunch. So really, I think the opportunities are really with the breakfast program, and then also with snack and summer. Lunch is it is being provided at most sites, so.
And what's that other category in terms of the challenges?
Yeah, so the other category, let's see. Going through my notes. The other category it was a mix of, sorry, I'm trying to find my.
We can look back.
Yeah, we can look back too. I'm like, I don't think there was a ton of themes that all clustered. I think expanding to new sites with breakfast, it ranged. It was some of the other pieces that we have, like with the timing, with school buses, transportation. It was kind of a mixed bag. So
just to go to Kyle's question is, I believe 11 SFAs who filled out the survey did not operate lunch at all of their sites. So that typically, I believe, was high schools. So we have pretty good saturation with the National School Lunch Program, but the real opportunity too is to increase the student participation. But it is pretty well, the program is being offered. There still are some opportunities, but it's more so in the other programs.
So Carrie, to your point, you had shared a data point earlier about 41% of students in Colorado are eligible for free and reduced lunch, but do you know how many are actually participating out of the 41%? Like, what is the gap between eligibility and participation? I didn't see that yet, so I was just curious if there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I don't have that offhand. We have that data. We have it by district as well.
Do you think there is a gap, though?
Yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity across all programs, and I could certainly pull that for future to see that. Yeah.
So we've got districts and then charter schools within those districts. So were all charter schools accounted for in that question of whether they were participating in that National School Lunch Program associated with that SFA if they were part of that district? So in other words, if you got a district school and they've got 5 charters, were they all asked or invited to respond to that question? Because oftentimes they may or may not participate.
So the food service director of the SFA answered the survey. So they would be answering if the charter school is under the SFA, they would have answered the question for all their sites. So the survey only went to entities, SFAs that are participating. So we did not capture charter schools, private schools, other entities that are not participating.
Breakfast for, again, just kind of that opportunity. The schools that showed or the SFAs that showed the no interest for implementing the first time, these are kind of some of the common challenges of just not seeing a need for the breakfast program. And then kitchen and staff time capacity. But again, I think there is still some of those opportunities. Like there are SFAs that are interested in implementing the breakfast program for the first time. I think it's just trying to figure out and kind of targeting those to help kind of implement.
So as you were going through the survey, these were multiple choice, I'm guessing? Was one of the options reimbursement too low?
Yeah, there's several challenges, and if you look in the report, they are all in here. We really just kind of highlighted the top ones, but there are definitely challenges. They vary across the SFAs. So I think it's something that we've continued to talk with CDE is as they're thinking through their technical assistance and training, these are the challenges or the best practices that we're highlighting that were at the top, but there's a variety of them, and that is definitely one of them. So I think it's really going to be supporting these SFAs and these summer sponsors with these kind of the higher level challenges and opportunities, but then really kind of going SFA to SFA and tailoring some of that technical assistance because they all do have some unique challenges that they're experiencing. So kind of having using both approaches of having some tailored kind of TA around it and then also some overall training that kind of cover the majority of whatever those best practices or challenges are. I think there's a lot of opportunity that we saw with after-school snack programs. And there's definitely some interest here with expanding either to new sites or also with the next slide with implementing for the first time. There is kind of a big chunk of I think SFAs that are concerned or don't have interest. A lot of times just because there's not the program to kind of attach the snack program to, so they're running into challenges like that, which I will kind of also probably address in some of the other notable findings a little bit later, because I think there's some opportunities with creating some more of those partnerships with different community-based organizations or other things in the communities to kind of figure out what some of those activities are that they might be able to partner with. Yeah.
So we're doing site visits for June. Some of you know that because I've met with you. Anecdotally, I know we fund quite a few of after-school programs. So I guess my question is, so it's anecdotal, I get that, but is there a sense, I mean, I know Danielle's here, but it seems, that number seems really high based on, at least to get an anecdotal understanding of how many after-school programs are available, some of which we fund. So I'm just wondering if is that accurate? I mean, do you feel like there's a disconnect between food service and the programming going on at schools? I mean, and again, you can tell me you have no clue because we know better, but that strikes me as odd, given how many programs, at least I can tell you, that are available at schools across parts of the state. Do you understand what I'm saying? And maybe the data won't show it, it just seems really high based on what seems to be available.
Actually implementing.
I'm going to give you more, so I'm going to give an anecdotal response.
I don't mean to put you
I'm sorry, I'm going to put Jen on the spot in a second. There is a disconnect. I mean, it's as simple as that. There's a huge disconnect between a classroom teacher who decides to stay after for an hour and a half and run a math health program, and the nutrition services team that we're not in that building. At least we're not in that building after 1:30 when we close down our cafeteria and lunch is over and our staff go home. So we don't know, nutrition services as the SFA does not know about the multitude of programs that are happening in our schools. Meanwhile, when we find out about a program, the reimbursable snack program mandates that it is accessible to all. And that's not necessarily a barrier because we communicate to that classroom teacher, hey, if somebody from the 4th grade decides to stop by and get a snack, you got to offer them one. But that's a hard operational program to execute when you're leaving in your milk cooler in the cafeteria 80 snacks and it has to be open to all, and the building has 300 participants or 300 enrolled. And so there are some programmatic operational challenges that we face after we overcome the hurdle of what after-school programming do you have? And so even in a high free and reduced district like Greeley, where we have one school out of 36, including our charter schools, that has a below 30% free and reduced rate, we have trouble finding these schools that are already area eligible to say, oh, hey, you have a chess club? We can leave snacks for free for your chess club. I'm going to put Jen on the spot because I have no idea what you do in a district where your highest free and reduced school is 40, is that a 9 or a 7? It's a 9. 49%.
So I'm in Douglas County, so obviously definitely one of the wealthier, lower free and reduced districts. And as far as after-school snack, obviously we would only have one school that even could qualify to run the program. But you run into similar challenges when it comes to summer feeding, and that your most successful sites are those that have a program already operating. And so we go out to schools and we say, hey, do you have anything going on this summer? Because you're in a zone we can serve. Oh, no, we don't have anything. And then we show up for something else and they have volleyball camp and all this. I'm like, I asked you if you had, oh, I didn't know that counted. I didn't know you meant that. Because that's not the school function or something. So there definitely is a disconnect in them communicating literally anything you have going on. Oh, that's a church camp that comes in to do that sports camp, so it's not really us. I don't care. It's kids. I want to feed them. So I think that is a very similar problem with after-school snacks.
Thank you for illustrating that, because that is definitely what we heard from the Key Informa interviews too. Thank you.
Abby?
Yeah.
Just quickly, Kyle, if you had the capacity to share a list of funded after-school programming with the Colorado School Nutrition Association, we could at the very, very least use our membership to reach out to those programs and ensure that if they are area eligible, that a snack program is an option. You might actually be the what do you call that? The linchpin. Thank you.
That should be a scary thought for everybody. I said 4 kids, I have a hard enough time managing a household. So we may, and so I think that's a good question to talk about. And there may be other resources. So with our Healthy Schools program, again, folks know the Health and Wellness Connectors. Some of our data aren't easy to get to that way. So that's part of the challenge. And this isn't just for food, but a lot of our grants, one, we're not really a hands-on funder, so we don't really dig in and get everything in the contract that says every person you're working with. So some of the data are harder to come back and say, hey, here's 6, here's who's in there, or here's in Douglas County, here's who we know we're funding. But I think it's a good question, and I can look into maybe some connection point somewhere. We just don't know everybody. Sometimes it's applicants telling us who they're working with, and we don't always check to see, are you really working with the school? Or the other piece, I think, a lot of our work goes through family resource centers. So off the top of my head, I can come up with a number of physical activity in particular. We used to do a lot of Cooking Matters work, which we're not funding directly anymore, but so I don't know if FRCA may also have that connection, because we don't obviously know everybody who's on the ground doing it, but, I was in Yuma last week, so RCRC is doing all of our after-school stuff for Akron and Yuma. So if those SFAs had responded, we don't know, it would probably shock me, because those are smaller communities. I could give you that data, but I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know if it would really lead to a connection as opposed to an area of work we're in. But not to pass the buck, but I just...
No, yeah. Yeah, so with Family Resource Center Association, so we have 31 member family resource centers across the state that we work with, and so we actually do pass-through funding from Health Foundation for operating budgets for our centers, and then they use that as they desire for their programming capacity building. But it could be an opportunity for sure to see if they find a need or if there's some sort of connection that can be made or a link that's missing. That could be something to talk about for sure.
I just wanted to jump in and make a quick comment or ask a clarifying question. So I heard Danielle, and I apologize, I forget your name, from Douglas County, but you mentioned making sure they're area eligible to participate. Is that just because that added level of counting and claiming by student name when they're not area eligible makes it not worth it? Because if any of your schools could participate even though you're not area eligible, and I'm not saying you don't know that, but is it just because then you have to take by student meal counts and the reimbursement's even lower, that it just becomes not worth your time?
For Greeley schools, it is absolutely the reimbursement. It doesn't cover the cost of the snack.
Right. I ran a breeze through summer. We saw a lot of the same best practices that summer sponsors and SFAs are doing to implement the program. These are the ones that kind of rose to the top, coordinating with the summer activities, of course, making sure the location's accessible, and marketing and outreach of the program, which I know you guys did a lot of work on this last year, and working with community partners. Some different challenges for both sponsors. The one that, just to stand out, like for summer sponsors, the no challenges, often those ended up being programs that have closed enrollment, and so you have to register for the program, so they just didn't really have, there's no students to increase participation to, because they only have so many that they can provide the program to. And then these are the other challenges, which I think are similar in what we've heard before as well. Definitely some different interest in expanding to new sites, and also just implementing for the first time. There's some different kind of, this is for the SFAs, in implementing the program for the first time. Definitely some different challenges here around just not having staff available during the summer to implement a summer program, things like that. And so the no interest definitely kind of highlighted some of these different challenges, or lack of summer programming. Again, no challenges for expanding to new sites with summer sponsors, because again, those are closed programs. They just don't experience the same types of challenges as the SFAs would. And I just want to highlight a few things here. These are just some other notable findings. Top 3 training needs, and you probably saw these themes kind of throughout, was around program promotion, strategies to reduce stigma of the programs and participating, and improving meal quality. We did see some different, when we kind of broke out what the training needs were by different regions of the state, different things definitely did come to the top for those different regions. So again, that's why we've recommended having kind of some regional approaches or some tailored approaches to training and technical assistance as CDE works with the different SFAs and summer sponsors. Interestingly, food access on the 5th day, most SFAs have no idea. They're not working on that 5th day, so they don't know how the kids are getting food on those days. And then valuable partners, we asked them about who is the most valuable partner to help support their child nutrition program, and 2/3 either don't know or have none, which is just interesting to me. As you're implementing these different programs that you're not connecting with different partners. And so I think just some work around there about like how do we make this a more like community-based programs and make those connections, or help the SFAs kind of make those connections. Because I think it could probably help with some of those SNAP programs and even summer programs if we can make those connections. I think that's it.
So really quickly, CDE has put together an implementation plan based on the needs assessment, and we're seeking funding for that. Because we're short on time, we hope to have more of an update on that probably in September, and we'll know about some of the funding that we've applied for to support the needs assessment findings and how CDE is going to approach that. But like you mentioned, it would include statewide training to go over some of those major themes that popped up with everybody, but really doing a lot of tailored one-on-one technical assistance for those areas of opportunity, including 4-day school weeks. All of those sponsors and SFAs who said they're interested in adding programs, those obviously would be rise to the top of people we want to connect with. And also a lot around that partner piece, which I thought still very surprising, that 2/3 said they weren't working with those community partners. So doing some convening and community engagement and making sure we're making those connections to make sure community partners, the community is coming together to support child nutrition programs. So with that, we have about 35 minutes to move into the next portion of really talking about how we're...
I'm going to pause you for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I had an idea.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie here in a moment, but this was actually an amazing conversation.
You can get a microphone.
Oh,
just
thank you.
sometimes,
Thank you.
much technology as we have, people can't hear
Yeah, thank you.
on the line.
Hi, this is Gina. This was such a wonderful conversation and really illuminated so many opportunities. Much of the conversation would have probably happened as we entered into our planning discussions. So what I'd like people to do right now is just to pause. One, take a minute if you need to stand up and stretch. But maybe circle, if you've already been taking notes, or write down 3 takeaways from the last hour and a half of learning, of opportunities that you heard that you want to make sure this group has some sort of role in potentially forwarding. So just take a moment, capture, write down, circle if you've already written them down, 3 ideas of things that came to you as being very important opportunities for this group to potentially work on in the future. And then we'll move into Carrie's overview of the synthesis that her and a small team put together for today.
And then I'm going to ask you to bring that next time this group meets, because with 35 minutes left, we're probably not going to get through our entire process today, but I don't want folks to forget all of these great takeaways to inform planning. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Carrie to kind of overview some of the strategy areas that she put together.
Thank you. So if everyone can pull out the strategy tables that are in your packet. Yeah. Was this maybe did the people on the phone have access to the strategy tables?
I'm going to share my screen so they can pull it up, but yeah.
The table, or not that table.
This one?
Yeah, that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over what we did here. So I developed this table by really synthesizing and organizing all of the information that we currently have. Certainly not all inclusive, but I took the findings from the needs assessment. I went through all the past work group meeting notes and discussions because I wanted to make sure we're not duplicating any conversations we already had. And then also looked at the asset submission form that Kevin's been collecting and people have been submitting on the work that you're doing. So I wanted to make sure I put together all that information into here. So what we did, we broke out the strategies into 3 categories. These are all the strategies that are listed under Goal 5 of the blueprint. And it really came down to technical assistance and training, marketing and outreach, and policy. I further broke the strategies down because, as you can see, they're fairly broad. But we really, as a group, have talked a lot about this already, and so I further narrow them into more focused areas, different strategies under each of the big buckets. So if you look at the focus area column, this is based on the needs assessment and our conversations. This is where we're going to start with the prioritization discussion. In the next column, I captured current work, and I wanted just to make sure that everyone is aware of what already is happening, and so we are continuing to be aware of that, and then really talk about what the role is of this work group, especially with some things that are already happening. So maybe it's a discussion around, does the work group provide an advisory or input role into initiatives that are already ongoing. And I also, for us to be mindful of also not duplicating efforts. And then the next column, examples, future activities. This was a lot of ideas that have come out of the last 7-8 months of this work group, and also with the needs assessment that we've been working on. So really these are here just to help visualize what these strategies might look like in action, but we really haven't gone this far into what that looks like. So for today's purposes and with Gina, we're going to focus on that focus area column to really start the discussion on where this work group wants to focus on moving forward.
Okay, so Kevin, would you mind bringing up the matrix that we put together? And we decided to do this online partly because the screen is so huge and how lovely. And secondly, because so that the people on the phone can be a little more actively engaged as well. So we're going to kind of overlay, many of you are probably familiar with the prioritization matrix, which allows you to explore feasibility and impact, and really is more of a tool to have a discussion about the background of the work, where the opportunities are for this group, what's the feasibility of being successful in terms of staff, resources, political climate, et cetera. And then impact being on the bottom matrix, which speaks to the ability to impact hunger in Colorado and the goals of the blueprint. So, but we're going to combine that and kind of overlay a discussion about roles, and this was a learning actually from Workgroup 4, and I feel like it's kind of gold actually, because It's probably not real, it probably is realistic that this group, in looking at that second column, I'm echoing, am I holding this too close? Am I talking too loud? I'm not used to using like one of these when I'm standing, but I feel like I have to stand because that's like my facilitator thing. I just have to stand up. But in that second column of strategies, there's a likelihood that this group will be involved in one capacity or another, and may not necessarily take what we call an active implementation role of having a project that they're forwarding on. However, they may very much provide input or serve in an advisory capacity, particularly if maybe the Children's Campaign or if one of the state agencies kind of owns the sphere of influence around that particular area, and may be a lead implementer. They may come to this group as an advisory group or to provide input. Likewise, this group may take a monitoring role, and that doesn't necessarily need to be legislatively related, but it could be that there's kind of an issue that you're watching, maybe there's a funding opportunity, and you just want to keep your eyes open and collectively do that. And likewise, it may be related to legislative, where you're monitoring whether it's federal policy, local, state, and at the same time, potentially organizing and mobilizing in an advocacy role. And in addition, out of all of these different 10 strategies that are currently listed here, this group may choose not to have any role, because maybe it's more appropriate for Workgroup 1 or Workgroup 4 to be working on it. So it's not going to be as simple as saying, here's a strategy, are we going to prioritize it or not? I'd like us to explore what does that look like, have a conversation about that. What is our role? And if you choose for the role to be active implementation, then we're going to put it on the prioritization matrix. Because if this group continues to meet as this large work group with all of this expertise, you're going to have the bandwidth to take on many more items as it relates to input advisory or monitoring advocacy, because it's probably not as robust a role as if you're actually implementing something. So that's the plan. Does that resonate with folks in terms of if this will move this group forward to determining how you're going to best be utilized and what you want to work on moving forward? I'm seeing some head nods, so that's good. And so, folks on the phone, please feel free to chime in as well. So that's the setup. A couple things I want to mention also are that in those other roles of input advisory, monitoring, advocacy, and just merely by collaborating, and I'm not sure where this is going to land in terms of roles and responsibilities, but the evaluation element to all of this work is really important. I heard a couple things today that I probably would have documented if I had my evaluator hat on for the effectiveness of this group. So the summer lunch program success being one of those examples. But again, by the nature of collaborating, you might not need to be actively implementing to make an impact. You could fulfill one of these other roles. So thinking about evaluation in the future, Erin, I'm sure that's on your list to think about as the overarching initiative. And then, Erin, did you want to speak a little bit to the resource? I feel like that was an agenda item we didn't.
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit before, and I'm happy to kind of address that as we go. But I think the main point is just we're working on getting more clarity around kind of what the resources available for the blueprint look like. But at this point in time, we're not, sitting on millions of dollars that we'll be able to distribute. Ideally, we'll get to that place, but we are not there yet. So I think just keeping that in the back of your mind of, thinking about resourcing strategies for these, obviously with the blueprint being able to be supportive of that, but not, again, like sitting on pots of funding. I think it's just helpful background to have.
So when we get to the place of talking about prioritization and we're looking at feasibility, just to be keeping in mind, staff time, capacity to do this work, and it's not to say you couldn't apply for something if there is something the group really wants to work on, apply for funding if there's something the group really wants to work on. So the other option I want to open up, but I think we're going to do it next time. There are 10, and thank you to Carrie and Naomi and others who worked on putting this together, because it sounds like you've all done a tremendous amount of work and had a tremendous amount of ideas that were all synthesized into this matrix with the second column of the 10 strategies. If there's anything missing, let's create a space for that, but let's create a space for that at the next meeting, once we get in the rhythm of this model and seeing if this is gonna serve our purpose and helping you prioritize. So I think what we'll do is just go ahead and dive in. The other thing I'll say is this is a very large group, and typically I would facilitate smaller groups within this, but there's so much expertise around the table, and part of the purpose of this is learning and sharing and analyzing, and I just feel like it wouldn't be effective if we were in small groups. So again, this is gonna go on into the next meeting because we only have about 20 minutes left. So I'd say let's try and get through maybe like 3 and just see how this model works, and then if we need to refine it for the next meeting, we will, and we'll go through all the rest, and by the end of this whole process, hopefully this group has made some decisions around what you're gonna work on and what your role will be related to those efforts. So, with that said, everybody, yes. Please, go ahead.
Just a quick question, and
Sure.
I think I raised this with Carrie before, and just wondering to what extent like this captures, or we could be thinking about the reactive nature of like the work that this group is doing, because I think like one of the pieces that I think is really challenging to capture in this is the flexibility and the nimbleness of like the coalition in addressing some of those pieces. So I just don't know if it's worth incorporating in this document or naming that that's also happening, and I hope it's getting captured, to that extent.
It's an excellent point. I think the monitoring advocacy role really gives you the opportunity to name that as part of your work, and then whether it exists as a current strategy in terms of addressing ongoing legislative issues, is that currently included, or is that something we want to add next time?
We have identified policies, but yeah, we could add that.
Yeah, so that kind of looks more proactive, but maybe we want to create a reactive one. And Kevin, if you could just add a line to the end, and it's probably easier said than done. So I'll make a note of it and we'll add it in between the meetings. I think that's a great point. Thank you. Actually, can someone else bring something? Okay. All right. Okay. So the first area is meal quality. And I'm going to turn this over to anyone in the room to talk about what that means in terms of the background. So we're going to go background, role, prioritization. This is our order of business.
Sure. Well, I can just talk what I perceive it to, or what it from the needs assessment and from experience what it means. And I think automatically people might think scratch cooking, but it means a lot more than that. Meal quality means food safety and sanitation, getting food from point A to point B in a safe, efficient manner. Meal quality means consistency. Is everyone getting a consistent meal? The first kid in line, the last kid in line. And then there is obviously the scratch cooking element. What is the kind of freshness quotient of the food, processed versus unprocessed? And a lot of that obviously depends on the service model, what facilities and equipment the SFA has or the sponsor has. So I think meal quality stems from a lot of different things. And any of the food service directors in the room, feel free to add to that. But the other part I would say is meal quality in terms of procurement, where the food is coming from, what region, just kind of the food chain from, farm to table, if you will. So I think it kind of has all of those things. Does anyone in food service director have anything to add?
I'm not a food service director, but.
Yeah. Or anyone.
Or anyone, thank you. Well, I was going to say, as I saw the data, I've certainly heard as others around taste. So I'm wondering if meal quality, if there's an opportunity to include that kind of conversation somewhere in the strategies. It seems like it keeps coming up as not just how good it is, but how much kids want it and that sort of thing. So I'm just throwing that out as an idea when we talk about quality.
Yeah, and I would say that also kind of blends into program promotion. So how do you promote the food? Is it through taste testing, things like that? And, that also kind of is a complicated piece of this, because the kids might prefer chicken nuggets, and that might not be something that we want to serve. That's just one example. So what do you do in that circumstance? Do you do raw chicken or drumsticks, and the kids don't eat it because they prefer nuggets? So you're looking at like the food environment, and that's a really tough one, because food service directors, they can't control the food environment, and that is really the driving force on food trends and taste and what's available. And, in my opinion, I think half the things in the supermarket shouldn't exist, but because of that, this is what is the norm. So that's a really great point.
I think in addition to that, skilled labor, I think, is part of, with the scratch cooking or the different things we'd like to do. Are we able to get that skilled labor in? Are we able to pay for them?
Right.
And can we support that?
Right. And what is the value of the food? Rainey kind of mentioned this earlier. Meal quality and, what is the value of food if we're giving kids, by the time they get their meal, 7 minutes to eat? What does that say about our food culture? And so it's a lot of different pieces, but I'm glad you brought that up about the taste.
And I don't know if this falls under the meal quality or the others, but the part that was mentioned in the analysis around involving students in menu development, especially for the older students, I'm wondering where if you put that under meal quality, or if that would be under one of the other strategies.
I think that would go under meal quality, program promotion. I honestly think that helps reduce stigma when there's involvement from students. So I see that kind of going into a lot of different things. I would say the first three.
And then just to add, cultural options for food, so depending on the makeup of where you are, students, especially in refugee-heavy communities, what people can and can't eat, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a huge part of meal quality. And I think that also, I think the USDA standards, they prescribe certain things, and some cultures may not imbibe in that, and that's another big issue.
So it looks like there's quite a bit of work going on. If you look at this matrix in terms of Live Well, CACFP, School Nutrition, Chef Ann Foundation, so forth and so on, for meal quality. And then there's also some examples of future activities. Does someone want to speak to how much of this work would need to be supported by the group in terms of implementation, or what if anybody has an opinion? I mean, ultimately this comes down to us figuring this out as a collective. So any thoughts on, is there an active implementation role for this group, or are people already doing this work, organizations already doing this work, and this group could help inform that? What are people's initial thoughts?
I think that any school food authority, food service director has, at least to some degree, involved themselves in meal quality, because it is, at the end of the day, not the free and reduced percentage of any given building that funds your program, but the participation thereof. So you can have 67% of your population free and reduced, but it does you no good if they don't eat your food. And so I'm going to throw Rainey in the ring, but Rainey has developed, alongside Live Well, a plethora of resources available to any food service director who wants to involve themselves in how to engage students and parents in meal quality.
So just following on that, so what do you think the role of this group would be from where you sit as a school food authority, SFA? Did I get that right?
That's a really a good and hard question. As I look around the room and I see 4 of us, 4, I'm miscounting, 4.5, give Naomi half credit.
I think there's people on the phone too. El Paso?
5, you're right, thank you, there are. Thank you for reminding me of that. I think that our participation in this group can help keep this group informed in how that work goes on, and others who are not actively involved as operators. So let's not, sorry, I shouldn't have left it at 5. That was rude and inconsiderate. There are others in the room who don't operate NSLP because they're not a school district, but they certainly are operating CACFP and summer food service programs, and meal quality is a primary focus. So of those of us in the room who are operators of school meals or of child nutrition programs, we can help keep this group informed of how that work proceeds. And I think there are those in this room who don't operate who can help connect us to new and emerging trends and research that we may not be aware of because we're so immersed in an industry that churns out food that is specifically formulated to meet USDA regulations.
So you were saying kind of like this group would serve, would serve kind of in an advisory input role. Okay, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, no, you're fine, I just didn't know.
I can't see your name either, so.
Stephanie, sorry.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
Okay, thanks.
For folks on the phone, Stephanie. There's two things. One, the Children's Campaign, I think there's other organizations in this room that have been part of the health equity advocacy cohort, and I think, that has been largely funded by the Colorado Trust. And the way that we're talking about health and health equity, I think is largely linked to food and how we serve food and how we talk about food. So to the extent that I could share some of the messaging that we worked on as a cohort and how we talk about the health and the health of our communities. I know for the public health folks on the phone, this might be a helpful link to talk about the overarching implications of not having food or lack of access to food on overall health. And then to the point that Danielle made around emerging research, I know that we haven't touched on breakfast after the bell, but there was some research that came out very recently that linked school breakfast with mental health and some challenges for kiddos who don't have access to a breakfast. And so I'd be happy to share that research, knowing that it's an emerging area and knowing that one of the issues that we're facing in our state are largely around social, emotional, and mental health. And so to the extent that the Children's Campaign can share that type of information and or delve a little bit more deeply and share some of the data points, we'd be happy to do that, and then happy to connect the folks from the Health Equity Advocacy Cohort Communications and Messaging team as well.
Does anyone else want to weigh into an idea for active implementation by this group, or are people feeling pretty comfortable with the idea of serving in kind of an advocacy input role, advisory input role? And it looks like a lot of this may fall under training and technical assistance or networking and information sharing. Do you all want to speak to that at all from the state program perspective?
I'm not sure if I understood the question. So, I mean, I think it's interesting how, program promotion strategies to reduce stigma, that came up in the training section, but it also is really, it goes through everything. So it goes through the summer, 4-day school weeks, and then down into the marketing bucket. I think as far as training and TA, I know there's a lot of organizations basically exist, and that's what they do, and that's what our role at CDE is, and I know with Livewell and Hunger Free, we're all in this space doing this. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I was curious just in terms of your perspective on meal quality specifically, what you thought the role of this group should be. And not to put you on the spot, but you do play, you and Livewell and Hunger Free, it sounds like all play a role in partnership with the school, food school authorities, and other operators, CACSP, child care centers, et cetera.
Gabby, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, we have proposed in our implementation, we're seeking funding to do more robust meal quality trainings around the state, and additionally doing one-on-one TA, and really building off the work that CACSP has done a lot around meal quality with their CHOP program, and really looking at providing a statewide meal quality training for all child nutrition program operators. We don't need to have them separate between programs. So that's something we're working on. So I could see an advisory and input role, but I mean, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great, from my perspective, I think what's challenging is the organizations that do this work are often grant funded. So if the funding's there, they're able to help. If it's not, they're not able to help. So what do we do in that situation? So having some sort of statewide, ability to do meal quality, and maybe it's funneled to those same organizations. Maybe it's not, but I think that's just been the challenge, is that we do have really unique organizations in our state that specialize in this work for both rural and urban school districts, but the way the funding model has been with it has not allowed it to continue. And so I think we have to figure out a way to institutionalize this in a state agency.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to look for a thumbs up, thumbs down, and folks on the phone, if you want to use your emojis in the chat box, that would be cool. Thumbs up as in, yeah, in terms of meal quality, kind of this group to serve in an advisory input role, knowing there's going to be a lot of different entities working on that. And if you are in agreement, thumbs up. If you aren't sure but can live with it, thumbs to the side. And if you are like absolutely not okay with that, put your thumb down so we can kind of see. And I don't know if your project charter has decision-making, so I'm leaning towards consensus with a fallback to majority vote, just because that's commonly practiced and for the sake of time, but I'm not sure if that's part of this group's agreement, but we'll just go with it. And if you have a concern about that, maybe talk to Carrie and Naomi after, would be great. So where are folks on this question about meal quality and this group serving an advisory input capacity? Can I see your thumb? Raise them high. Okay. It looks like we have a pretty vast majority of thumbs up in the room. Do you all have thumbs you want to share? No. And where are we on the chat, Kevin?
On the chat, we had 4 to the side and 1 up.
Do folks on the side want to share? I think we have definitely a majority, and actually we have consensus. So I'm gonna move forward. We have pretty broad consensus. There's a lot of people in this room. So for the sake of time, it's okay. We'll move forward. And I think it would be worth sharing maybe in an email for those thumbs to the side what your concerns are, and maybe can share it with Carrie just so we can document those, and anyone in this room as well who would like to share any concerns about that. I think it's important to just understand what those are. Okay, so the next one is program promotion, which we talked about a little bit, and guess what? It's 11:53. So can we have 2 hours at your next meeting to work through the other 9 ideas?
Yeah, of course, if that works for
What do people think about this model? It's a little slow, there's a lot of people in the room. We can rethink about breaking into smaller groups, but there's also learning that's going to be lost if we do that. So I'm open to feedback. Go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering if we just want to explore, I'm kind of wondering if we just want to explore the side vote a little bit, because I'm feeling a little confused if I.
Yep.
I can do that.
Explore the side vote just for a moment to make sure we're on.
So the folks on the phone there were like 4 thumbs to the side. I can't see your name, Jane. Dari? What's your name?
I'm Rainey.
Rainey.
Yeah.
Rainey asked if you'd be willing to share some of your thoughts. But I do want to be mindful, we only have a few minutes left, so I don't want to leave the conversation today not resolved either, so I'm a little concerned about that.
I'm thinking we're not resolved, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, this is Derek
Yeah.
Lambert with Sarah Strength. I feel like I'm just sitting in for the single call, and it's a very interesting conversation, but I didn't want to give a strong opinion one way or the other. I think generally I defer to the group discussion. I'm happy to take this back to Carolyn, but I did not want to take a strong position for or against.
Thanks, Derek. Others on the phone?
This is Liz. You had described it as being unsure but could live with it, and I am sort of new to the group. Jovial Concepts is going to be a site sponsor in 2020 for the Barnum neighborhood, and so I felt a little unsure, but figured I could live with it. You know, we also have a garden program, and I see farm to table there, and so that makes my eyes sparkle. But that's why I went with to the side.
Thank you for sharing that. Any others on the phone want to share? So I think it is important to confirm decision-making methods before we move forward, because if we're not going to be okay with thumbs to the side, if getting this many people in consensus with thumbs up is going to be it's going to take a very, very, very long time, which is okay if that's what the group chooses to do. I think we just need to probably get clear on that. By the time maybe at the beginning of the next meeting, the group could talk about it, and then we can move into the planning piece.
Yeah, I can have that.
That'd be great.
This is Liz.
To your question earlier.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also wanted to say, since I can't see all of the options, because I didn't receive, the executive director is on the email list and I haven't received the package. And so that also weighed into I'm not quite sure what all the options are for these different things. I know it was brought up real quick, but that was another reason I just wanted to throw out. So,
Thank you. So you didn't get you don't have the spreadsheet sitting in front of you, so you can't kind of look through all the information. That's good to know, and we'll make sure we get that out to people in the future. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to give feedback about the question of like in groups or as a larger group.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just with some of, like, we all have, I think, expertise in different areas. And like for that, I honestly just looked at the SFAs in the room and was like, I will support them because they're the ones. So that's kind of how I decided my vote. But if it was a group of people, like making sure that we have the important people making those votes, I think makes it better to have a large group just because not all of us are experts in that area. So I just really want to support the experts and what they need from this group for these strategies that we talk about.
Yeah.
So I would vote that we stay a larger group, even though I know it might take a little longer.
Thanks, Taylor. I appreciate that. I see some heads nodding. I see quite a few heads nodding. People are comfortable with that. Okay, as long as we're okay with the amount of time. And also, I mean, the other thing we could do is maybe set, it's a balance, right? Like you want to allow for the discussion, but you don't want to rush. But it sounds like there has been a lot of discussion over the last 8 months. So the other thing we could do is maybe set like a timer for the background discussion on each area. And we could set a range of like, I don't know, 7 to 10 minutes per issue. And then, I mean, if there's one that obviously the group was really, really struggling with, we can spend more time. But maybe as a general rule, then it'll help us stay a little bit more on track. Would people be comfortable with that, of setting a time frame for each topic so we can work through them? Thanks.
One other thing that I would suggest that might help is, it looks like with the needs assessment, there are some specific projects. It might help under each of those strategies to put sort of some of the ideas of specific projects so that when you're thinking about that, you have in mind what that could look like. I think that might help the conversation be a little more concrete.
That's great. And is that this last column on here?
Yeah, so that's in the future activities.
Okay.
I pulled together what this group, I tried to capture everything this group has talked about thus far in those buckets.
But we can review those systematically next time, like out loud, so people can hear them and ask questions about them.
Yeah. So we haven't necessarily gone down and had too much discussion at that specific project level. So there's certainly probably a lot more that we can add into that, but at least it gives us a place to start.
Yeah, great. And this is at a high level. This is probably like not your 30,000 foot view, but your 15,000 foot view. We're not getting down into the weeds of the 5,000 foot specificity, but we have to kind of just start somewhere in having prioritization conversations. So anyway, thanks everyone for your participation so far. And if you wouldn't mind filling out the meeting evaluation for today's meeting, I know folks would appreciate that. And I'll plan on seeing everyone next time. Do you have any closing words?
No, thank you so much, and continue to feel free to reach out to me if you have any feedback or anything that you want to make sure that we talk about or address in these meetings. And otherwise, thanks for coming, and we'll see you in September. Good luck with back to school.
Meeting.